Now that we know how much the tariffs are going to be, the next question is how much of that increased cost by the retailers, by the manufacturers, is going to be passed on to you and I as consumers? And will the actions taken by the retailer and manufacturers actually make things worse? And they could make things worse. Let's jump in. This is from the Wall Street Journal. It says big retailers, hardball tariff playbook, haggle, diversify, and raise prices. Walmart, Home Depot, Target, and others ask China-sourced suppliers to share costs. A lot of those negotiations are going on now. And during Trump's first administration, the retailers did a really good job of getting their suppliers to split the cost with them. It was common for the supplier to eat half of the cost and for the retailer to eat half of the cost, which is why you and I did not see that much price increases during Trump's first term with the tariffs. But now these are bigger tariffs and they may last a lot longer. And so what's going to happen? This is Walmart was pressuring their providers so strongly that they actually got summoned by the Chinese government. This too is from the Wall Street Journal. Walmart gets an earful from China over response to Trump's tariffs. Beijing is under economic pressure, seeks to help local factories facing requests to cut prices. Goes on to say Chinese authorities summoned Walmart officials for addressing down this week after receiving complaints that the retailer was pressuring some Chinese supplier to cut prices to absorb the cost of U.S. tariffs. So at some point, there's nothing left more to squeeze. And then the power that other countries have, obviously Walmart does business there. And in an implied threat, the Wall Street Journal goes on to say, the Chinese officials told Walmart that Chinese consumers who shop at Walmart stores could easily find alternatives. So there's hardball being placed on both sides. My concern in all this is what if the retailers overplay their hand? What if they squeeze too hard and then companies start going out of business? We saw that happen before where suppliers to the big retailers that unfortunately, they get very reliant on these big retailers, Amazon, Home Depot, Walmart, and their survival depends on selling to these players. But if there's no more left to cut, my question is, what happens when these suppliers, what happens if they go out of business? And I think part of what we're going to see is we're going to see more shrinkflation, where we're getting less material, we're getting less goods for the same price. And we're also going to see what I am saying in a clean version, garbification of products. So the quality is going to go down. They may use a lower quality product. They might change out materials. And, some of that might have safety implications. I certainly hope it doesn't. But I know when suppliers get pressed, unfortunately, they can take shortcuts that they should not do. And as I said earlier, what happens if these suppliers go out of business? There's not many there's not many firms that can provide services and goods at the level that these big retailers need. So if they go out of business, things could really spiral quickly from an inflation standpoint, where all of a sudden the demand in the United States stays relatively constant or goes down because of the price increase, but the supply goes down a lot more, and that could cause inflation to accelerate. Now, not everything is negative. The Wall Street Journal also had an article by Sebastian Herrera that is the possible silver lining for Amazon. And the reporter says that Amazon is particularly vulnerable to tariffs, given its global footprint for supplies, and about 1/4 of Amazon's cost of products it sells, 1/4 of that comes from China, according to Morgan Stanley estimates. But here's the silver lining. President Trump recently eliminated a tax policy known as de minimis, which historically benefited importers into the U.S. that sell to U.S. consumers under the brands of Temu and Shein, or Shine, I believe it's pronounced. And those are rivals to Amazon. These are companies that were shipping direct to consumers or shipping over quantities. I believe the old rule was under $800 worth of goods could come into the US and not pay tariffs. So it was kind of a loophole. And Amazon was suffering from that. However, in response to that, Amazon launched their own service just last November, and it launched something called Amazon Haul, which is very similar to Temu, a service that mails inexpensive products to customers from warehouses in China. So Amazon too may now be directly impacted by the closing of the de minimis loophole. So these tariffs are very complex, right? We know what the U.S. Has put, what tariffs we've now put on various countries. And now we've started to hear, just in the first 48 hours, some of the retaliatory tariffs, specifically from China, just came out today as I record this. So this is round 2. And now what's playing on behind the scenes is the scrambling that's taking place by the folks that work with these providers of goods and services from overseas and are reselling it to you and I. And how much of that cost can great operators like Amazon, like Home Depot, Walmart, how much of that can they absorb? And Walmart and Amazon are just so fixated on providing the lowest possible price. They're amazing operators. They know how to do things better, faster, cheaper. And we see that also comes with collateral damage. We've seen that with the U.S. workforce and just how they're being squeezed to do more and not not being able to keep up in their wages with inflation. So what is the next move? And I think the next move is every bit and perhaps more important than the first move, which was the tariffs. How do we respond, and how does that impact things? And how are we all affected by that? So if the retailers squeeze their vendors too hard, then some of those vendors are going to go out of business. We saw that the Chinese government is getting involved to protect their vendors as well. And what does that do from a standpoint of firms here in the U.S. that have business in China? So this all gets very complex very quickly, and intertwined in all this is what's going to happen with interest rates here in the U.S. As I record this, the head of the Federal Open Markets Committee, the chairman, Jerome Powell, just mentioned that because of the tariffs, the Federal Open Markets Committee is going to have to pause on any interest rate decreases that they may have had planned, as they see not only these first order impacts by the tariff, but the second and the third order impacts that we've been talking about in this video. So hopefully we can all navigate this and minimize the impact, and we can come to a new arrangement globally so that we can continue to have this global trade take place and not spiral in a bad way out of control. If you enjoyed this video, the YouTube algorithm says this is the next video of mine that you should watch. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.